Hello, my name is Michael Curran from Queen's University Belfast, and I am a co-author on this paper with Shane Carmody and John Spillane from the University of Limerick. The paper is titled Underground Utility Services on Irish Construction Projects, Current Work Practices and the Effectiveness of the Health and Safety Authority HSA Code of Practice. Underground utility services are an inherent feature in the formation of any infrastructure project, and nearly all urban utilities are buried underground. Some basic functioning utilities include gas, electricity, and telecommunications. The growing demand for utility services has resulted in much construction of new utility installations, maintenance, and repair systems. However, services can be extremely dangerous if the wrong methods and tools are incorrectly used, coupled with operative inexperience. Excavator operators undertaking tasks in the presence of underground utilities have the ever-present risk of striking buried utilities. A utility strike occurs when any element of the utility network infrastructure is hit, leading to damage during excavation. In Ireland, the dangers of working with underground utility services has been acknowledged by its governmental statutory organisations. The Electricity Supply Board, ESB, have published guidance on avoidance of electrical hazards when digging and drilling, and the Health and Safety Authority, HSA, have issued a code of practice for avoiding danger from underground services. On review, previous research acknowledging and highlighting the effectiveness of these guidelines is scant. It is necessary to identify and evaluate why utility strikes are still occurring and causing disruption, if these guidelines are being utilised effectively. Therefore, the aim of this study is to evaluate current work practices within the Irish underground utility service industry and to analyse services that are regulated and implemented by the HSA's Code of Practice. A qualitative research method is undertaken, encompassing a literature review and 6 semi-structured interviews across 3 case studies. Further details of the research method can be found within the main paper. The interviews commenced by gaining general background information about each participant and their respective project. A range of operatives were interviewed, including groundsmen, engineers, and directors. This was followed by a discussion on service industry issues in Ireland and how safety can be maximised on work areas surrounding services. Findings from the interviews and literature review were amalgamated and thematically analysed, identifying keywords, topics, and themes for discussion. 10 factors that influence service strikes were identified. The most common issues identified were no scanning, no as-built drawings, key indicators not studied, poor plant operator, and poor communication. 10 strategies to improve safety around services were identified, and the most common strategies included scan the full works area, accurate and on-time as-built drawings, and communication between staff before work takes place. Regarding the issues, no as-built drawings was identified as a recurring theme. The HSA states that it is the duty of the designer to provide up-to-date as-built drawings before any project commences. The literature supports that the precise knowledge of the positioning and routes of services has become a necessity in the service industry, which leaves no excuse for companies not to have access to as-built drawings. Another issue was no scanning. A common cause of utility strikes is not using appropriate geophysical methods to scan an underground area. The research identified that the Code of Practice clearly states why and how scanners and maps should be used, yet this information appears to be ignored according to the interviewees. Another theme, key indicators not being studied. The client's duty is clearly outlined in the guidelines and states that competent and experienced designers and contractors should be employed where applicable. One of the respondents stated that most issues can be minimised and eradicated by hiring experienced and competent contractors and designers. However, there is a risk of human error. Nevertheless, another respondent remarked that if the code is observed properly by operatives, then there should be minimal strikes occurring on site. Regarding strategies, scanning the full works area was identified as one of the key themes. The Health and Safety Executive in the UK and the Health and Safety Authority in Ireland both actively encourage the use of scanners to locate services within the work area. Another strategy identified was accurate and on-time as-built drawings. The accuracy of as-builts can be very misleading at times according to the literature. In this research, the time it takes to access certain types of as-built drawings was a concern for some of the interviewees, as this has the potential to stop work from commencing. For example, fibre optic cable as-built drawings can take nearly a whole month before the operative receives them on site. Another theme identified was more civil inspectors present on site. The role of the inspector helps to identify the service when excavation takes place and its approximate location before excavating. More civil inspectors would maximise the safety around services as projects commence. Also, the civil inspector would also sign off on any work done to the service, which in turn increases the chances of the service being installed as per specification. The interviews concluded with a discussion on the HSA's Code of Practice for avoiding danger from underground services. One of the main improvements suggested is the inclusion of a section based on key indicators and how they can be clearly identified. Experienced and competent contractors should understand what key indicators are and how they can be utilised to prevent strikes from occurring. However, some guidance is still necessary. One respondent suggested that it would take an inexperienced operative far less time to understand what key indicators are from using a guidance document, rather than weeks or months of on-site experience. Nevertheless, there is no doubt that on-site experience and guidance from more experienced operatives is vital to young operatives, but it still takes considerable time to provide the education and training. Overall, the key contribution of this research reinforces that the Health and Safety Authority's Code of Practice is effective in promoting safety in the underground utility services industry in Ireland. However, the research also highlights that the Code of Practice is not being followed and utilised effectively by operatives in the industry, and it provides recommendations for appropriate implementation and use. Thus, the study encourages and supports continuous investigation into health and safety practices and guidelines of underground utility services in Ireland. Thank you for listening.